Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Old Dragon's Tale Part 3, and my gosh, things are getting more and more interesting. I think every single part that we do of this, the more it's getting like juicy bits, and it looks like the chat's enjoying it too. Joining me on this journey through like all this crazy lore. It's interesting when you get to these points where the chat starts to slow down, because I think people are starting to like think about things and really kind of chewing on things, which is always really good. So anyways, it's been a lot of fun. But yes, hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after Mushoku Monday. I greatly appreciate your guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Last week, we had a ton of stuff to go through. Nicholas with 32 months. Thank you so much for the long time support, Nicholas. Thank you. Orsted Cultist with 27 months. Thank you for long time support as well. Tyler with a membership. Thank you so much. I think they dropped by during the live stream, but thank you so much for your support. Gearless, welcome back, Gearless. It's been a long time, Gearless. I hope you're doing well, but Gearless dropping a massive super. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. Gearless, for those who don't know, has been supporting Mushoku Monday for a long time, and it's greatly appreciated. Rosemoise, as usual, again, also a long-time supporter with another super. Thank you so much. And Roflix Ray with 20 months at this point. Thank you. You guys are absolutely amazing. Again, to part with your hard-earned money in order to support this and keep it going. But that all said, I don't think I really have anything to really kind of dive into that I missed last week. I think it was pretty much straightforward for the most part. Again, some juicy bits. I did get a little bit of nudge to say, don't try to focus too much on the time frame that we're in. So I'm gonna try, but just don't focus too much on that. It'll make sense later on. So I'm not gonna like dig as much as I did last week into that whole thing. I think I got a little carried away with a little bit of the continent stuff, but we'll see. But yes, let's dive into Chapter 6. Red Dragon Taming. A few days later, Lady Dola took me to a new place. The destination was on the outskirts of the town. The building stood in a section with few houses and was surrounded by a dome-shaped wall. Several tall, narrow entrances pierced the walls, and Lady Dola entered through one of them. Naturally, I followed. The moment I stepped inside, an unfamiliar animal scent stung my nose. I couldn't help but grimace. Though I stopped short of covering my nose, it wasn't because the smell was unpleasant. Rather, it reminded me of the den I had in the demon world. It was the same sort of smell. On top of that, from the depths of the building came raucous, screeching noises, adding to the atmosphere. Was it unsettling? No. More than anything, I felt a wave of nostalgia. A nostalgia that he doesn't really want. Like, oh, I remember those days. Should I ask where we were? Or venture a guess? Before I could decide, Lady Dola turned to me and spoke. This is the dragon taming facility. At her words, I let out a small breath of acknowledgement and looked around. I had heard of this from her classes. The dragon folk could fly using their own wings, of course, but because they relied on manipulating force fields to do so, their cruise speed wasn't particularly fast. Additionally, the dragon aura required for flight was immense, making long-distance travel difficult. Interesting, yeah, so just rely on them to actually physically do it. But interesting here, I actually am surprised that they had been trained together for so long. Again, she's been training him for a long time. We're talking many years, like a decade. I think they imply like a decade at this point. And this is the first time that she's taken him to where she works. That's kind of interesting. Not a big deal, but it was tiring too. Thus, when the dragon folk needed to travel far, they rode red dragons. Amongst the dragons, unless it's, of course, the dragon god. He's just like, whatever, cruising through the area. Amongst the dragons, red dragons were relatively small, but their range was far greater than that of dragonfolk. However, red dragons were naturally ferocious creatures. In the past, they were even considered natural predators of the dragonfolk. Yeah, we've learned that. Red dragons, upon seeing the dragonfolk, would often attack them and kill them. That's why they were subdued and tamed. Captured red dragons were taught to recognize the superiority of the dragonfolk, disciplined so they wouldn't resist, and made usable as mounts. From today onward, you will work as one of my subordinates. This will be your workplace. Yes, ma'am. Even if you hadn't become my subordinate, I intend to bring you here eventually. As long as you live in the dragon world, relationship with dragons will be unavoidable. Learning about their nature will always be to your advantage. Again, which is kind of surprising that it took this long. I mean, she's mentioning it here. I was going to take you here eventually, but I'm surprised it took this long to bring him here. Especially with how seemingly beneficial these dragons are to them for a long distance. With that, Lady Dola began walking deeper into the building. As we proceeded, I realized the facility was far larger than appeared from the outside. While walking, I decided to ask questions that had been on my mind. Lady Dola, why did you request for me to become your subordinate? After hearing about your circumstances, I decided that this work would be most suitable for you. Suitable, you say? Our work is widely appreciated by the dragon folk. It is a role that does not garner resentment. Interesting. And again, the assumption there and the joke there was the idea of her trying to get close to the dragon god. Lady Dola couldn't have the dragon god, so she's going after the dragon god's son. This makes sense. And again, I think I could see them through this long time of her training him, that she has grown a bond with Laplace, and that she would legitimately want to help Laplace specifically. But she's learned about this whole purpose, and yes, it's a lot to do with the idea of, like, she's going to go, well, if the dragon god wants this, we need to make sure that it happens, because the dragon god wants it. But there's a side of me that almost kind of, you know, I want to have a hope here that it's really a lot to do with the fact of I want to help Laplace with his goal. It all works together in the end. Dragon taming might seem like a mundane job at first glance. However, in the dragon world, numerous dragons exist as livestock. Dragon warriors always ride dragons and fight alongside them. Though considered livestock, dragons are also partners and comrades in battle. You can compare the relationship to that of a knight and their horses in modern world. Despite being called a taming facility, this place was involved in much more than just taming, from treating dragons with severe injuries or illnesses to assisting with birth. The scope of their work was extensive. For the dragon warriors, this facility was where they cared for their partners. The dragon world was a harsh place. Even red dragons often even came close to death during battles. Because of this, many dragons received care here, and there are many amongst the dragon folk who deeply appreciate the work done here. Yeah, again, like, if your goal is to be seen as an equal, a lot of them are going to appreciate the work that you do for their dragons. Of course, not every severely injured dragon could be saved. However, no one blamed Lady Dola or her staff when that happened. Amongst the dragon folk, it was unthinkable to resent those who had done their best. For these reasons, dragon taming work was perfect for me. Yeah, I can see it. Again, I'd assume that she's probably doing it for the dragon god, but again, I can think through extension, him as well. It's two birds, one stone. Though it took time, it was a profession that earned me recognition across the entire world. And because it was humble work, it didn't invite envy. That's true too. I mean, it's not like he's being put in a position of being like a general or something like that, that people would be like, oh, he's in that position because the dragon god. He got basically a shoe-in. Like, the door was opened by the boss himself. It's humble work. Besides, you are incredibly talented. And when someone talented is nurtured, one naturally wishes to keep them close. I am honored by your praise. Aw. Perhaps embarrassed by her compliment, Lady Dola averted her eyes and walked further down the corridor. The narrow hallway eventually opened up into a wide passageway. It was large enough for fully grown red dragons to pass through. Along the passageway were multiple cages, each housing a massive, red-scaled reptile, curled up and resting. These are red dragons. They seem surprisingly calm. The red dragons were infamous for their ferocity. They were said to attack any living thing that entered their line of sight, devouring anything and everything in their path. Yet the red dragons before me simply lay still, gazing at me and Lady Dola with disinterest in their eyes. It was the first time, it's kind of a scary thing, yes, to kind of consider with the whole situation that we have in the current time of the storytelling. The fact that this girl is like walking up to this red dragon and he's just flicking her. It was my first time seeing one up close, and it was not at all what I expected. These ones have already been tamed. If you go deeper inside, you'll find the wilder ones. I see. So, what should I do first? A new recruit's task has been decided for ages. Follow me. I trailed behind Lady Dola, and she led me further into the facility. As she said that, the deeper we went, the louder the dragon's roars became. The flapping of their wings resounded in the air, and the cages grew sturdier. The dragons here were more restless, some even growling at me, as if to intimidate the unfamiliar presence. However, one sharp glare from Lady Dola was enough to quiet them immediately. These dragons have all been training for a few years. They're still rough around the edges. Once they've learned to trust all the dragon folks as their ally, they'll be moved to the previous section. That area sees more visitors from the dragon folk. It seems the dragons were gradually moved closer to the outskirts of the facility and closer into the city of the chaos as they progressed in their training. The very back holds cages for dragons that have only just begun their training. Those ones are barely different from the wild counterparts. So, my job is to train the wild dragons then? I assumed this was the case, as there was nowhere left to go. However, Lady Dola scolded me. Yeah, that kind of made me wonder. The idea that maybe her having him essentially do the initial breaking, that yes, these things are dangerous, but like isolated and captured, they might be easily beat around basically. Like there's a purpose here in literally to physically break them and make them submit to the dragon folk. I kind of wonder, Fool, why would we assign such an important and dangerous task to a newcomer? Follow me. Apparently not. I mean, I did read the whole scolding thing, but I wasn't sure exactly what that would be. She led me down a side path between two cages. As we walked, The wild roar of the dragons filled the air. It must have come from an untrained dragon. The sound of such a massive creature reverberated through my core. If you heard it up close, it would likely send shivers down your spine. Even I, who'd once hunted beasts in the demon world, nearly froze in my tracks. Beasts and dragons are on entirely different levels. I mean, yeah, I think the level of, like, threat here is, like, beasts way down here, and then I would probably say monsters right here, and then dragons right here. Like, it's always been that kind of case with the Mushoku Tensei area. I mean, monsters are kind of in an area of, like, it could be many things. It depends on how much mana has sort of corrupted it, or what the thing was before it was corrupted, but still. Had Lady Dola not been walking ahead of me, I might have stopped in my tracks altogether. And so, Lady Dola saw through my apprehension. She turned back to me, her usual cold, piercing gaze meeting mine. What's wrong? Are you scared? No, I was just surprised by the suddenness. Well, that's fine. If something like this makes your knees buckle, you're not fit for the job. I straightened myself up, steeling my resolve. From here on, what awaited me wasn't just a boring or simple job. Not that I had underestimated it. Still, I thought it would be safer than fighting something head-on. Dude just got his chance, you can't break it. The place I had been taken to housed a caged red dragon. Compared to the other red dragons, this one was significantly smaller. At the time, I figured it was likely a hatchling or perhaps an underdeveloped specimen. The dragon appeared agitated, growling low, snorting heavily, and backing himself against the wall in a defensive posture. It looked to me like he might lunge at me at any moment. The idea of flying through the skies with him as my steed seemed like a distant dream. For you, your job is to train this one. Understood. At the start, I won't say anything more. Feel him out for yourself. Get a sense of what a dragon really is. It struck me as unusual since Lady Dola had been so hands-on with everything else, save for the act of flying itself. Yeah, I was about to say, flying didn't seem like she wanted to get too involved. But yeah, this is kind of curious to me. It makes me kind of wonder if each individual dragon potentially has its own, like, quirks and thing about kind of overtaking them. But it could also be that fact that she just wants him to have one for himself. Here, this is yours. Train it however you want. Learn more about dragons through your experience with this thing. It felt like she was leaving me to fend for myself this time. Then again, our time as a teacher and student was over. Now that I was her subordinate, it was time for me to figure out my own approach. Not actually as as a subordinate for a job. Train. I hate this idea of, like, a boss saying, whatever, you'll figure it out, and then go, why didn't you do it right? Well, you didn't teach me what the hell I was supposed to do. If you find it truly impossible, you may kill him. Kill him? I'll check back in a year. God, these people in time. God, these people in time. With that, Lady Dola swiftly left, leaving only me and a growling dragon behind. The dragon stared me down, his hostility clear. I stood there for a while, thinking, how could I get this dragon to submit to me? Should I beat him into submission? No. This dragon was still small, but he had probably already been beaten down by another dragonfolk, captured, and brought here. I wonder if they'll do this whole thing where, like, one dragonfolk, like, beats it down and then somebody else comes in to kind of nurture it. That would be a dumb way to do it. I mean, it would work. It's just really kind of screwed up. If he hadn't submitted yet, then it wasn't a matter of physical strength. This was a stubborn, defiant creature. Beating him would likely yield no results. I'm kind of surprised that Laplace is kind of thinking this way. This seems like a very kind of thoughtful way of considering this stuff. Coming from somebody who before was, again, a wild beast that was brought in and then trained by Dola. So all I can assume is that Dola has taught him something like this. Or perhaps Lunaria. It could be Lunaria's experience with her. After some thought, I left the area. I retraced my steps back down the corridor and approached a dragonfolk who happened to pass by. He gave me a suspicious look as I offered a deep bow. From today, I am honored to serve under Lady Dola. My name is Laplace. A newcomer, huh? I'm Gara. Lord Gara, may I ask a question? Are you thinking that I sought help from a senior? No, it wasn't like that. Lady Dola had told me to get a feeling of the dragon myself. If I relied on someone else, it would go against her instruction. This is about preparing something I would need to handle things in my own way. Where can I find food for the dragons? Go straight down this way, and you'll find it. Yes, food. It might sound simple, but I believe food was the most important thing. Yeah. It shows that you're willing to give them something, and there's an open door for a transaction to happen there, some sort of bond to create. For wild creatures, survival revolves around food above all else. Having grown up as a wild child in the demon world, I knew that better than anyone. My life back then was structured entirely around meals, so food came first. Following Gara's instructions, I made my way to the food storage and received a portion of food from the attendant there. It was a massive piece of meat from another red dragon. Feeding dragon meat to dragon. This was likely stemmed from dragon folk's own diet of dragon meat. But beyond that, it seemed designed to instill a specific mindset. By eating the I was about to think about this. By eating the flesh of its kin, the red dragon would realize it was now prey, no longer at the top of the food chain. Okay, I wasn't going there. My brain wasn't going there, but I guess it technically fits as well. They're going to eat exactly what we eat to show you that we eat your kind. I was also thinking it might be an aspect of like some beasts and animals believe that consuming something that is strong will make them stronger. You consume this powerful foe, you will get the power that they have, and the dragons might believe that. But again, there's also the aspect of what else is here to eat. Is this land going to have a plethora of all different types of creatures that would be different than just dragon? With the meat in hand, I returned the red dragon. First, I had to fill his belly. That was essential. However, the dragon glared at me, clutching the massive chunk of meat, and roared ferociously. Its attitude seemed to say, I don't need that. Just leave me alone. Even when I placed the meat before him, the dragon didn't so much as glance at it. He refused my offer outright. Maybe, he thought, this meat was poisoned. This is a problem. And just like that, I ran out of ideas. You might think, hey, wait, that was only your first attempt. But back then, this is all I could manage. It's like, what can I do? Oh, that. Yep, I'm screwed. I was just a former wild child from the demon world. Someone who'd only done a little training and studied in the dragon world. What could you expect me to pull off in front of a dragon? Wait, no, there was one thing. One experience from my short and impoverished life that stood out vividly. You gotta get a name. Yeah, I was gonna say you gotta embrace it like it's a child. A name. I will give you a name. Yes, a name. I thought that giving a name was important to establish hierarchy. If it can understand language, I mean, has Dola and them taught it language? Because I think that she specifically, one of her duties is to teach language. They just capture this thing. Does it even understand things? But at the same time, what happened with Laplace? He didn't understand what they were saying. He just knew that word was important. So I guess that's the idea there. When I was named, I felt like I'd been given something precious. I also gained a sense of purpose, to live for Lord Dragon God. That's why I thought of names. At the time, it was rare to give a dragon individual names. Dragons were just dragons. They might be called red dragons or black dragons to distinguish their types, but individual designations were almost non-existent. Your name will be... But this was my first time naming anything. No ideas came to mind right away. So I found myself hesitating in front of a growling dragon. Maybe the hesitation made me appear weak. The dragon suddenly leapt forward, attempting to attack me. Wait a second. I easily caught its upper jaw. Compared to Lady Dola's precise, calculated movements, the frightened red dragon's attack was slow, almost laughably so. The same went for strength. At the time, thanks to the extensive training, I had begun to grasp how to handle dragon aura. I wasn't yet aware of the immense power that lay dormant within me, but even so, it was enough to stop a smaller dragon in its tracks. No matter how much the dragon struggled, his upper jaw remained fixed in the air as if locked in place. This is kind of surprising. I had begun to grasp how to handle dragon aura. I would assume with how much he's fighting, or he was fighting and training with Dola, that he had gotten to the point where he's pretty much got it down pat. But just beginning to handle it? Interesting. Even as he tried to free himself by pressing against his lower jaw, he couldn't even manage to make my hand budge, let alone bite it off. At that moment, a memory likely flashed through the dragon's mind of the many times during his training that he had defied the dragon folks and was nearly killed. Fearing he would be hurt again, the dragon flapped his wings to attempt to flee, but he couldn't move. His body, held in place by his upper jaw, remained still no matter how hard he flapped his wings or twisted himself. The thought of breathing fire crossed his mind, but in his near frantic state, the dragon couldn't even perform a simple task of inhaling deeply. Eventually, the dragon exhausted himself and stopped struggling. At the same time, an idea came to me. Selyakt. Your name will be Selyakt. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Selyakt. Curious where that came from. When I said that, the dragon slowly lifted his gaze. Reflected in his eyes was a being with sinister hair, someone who quite literally looked nothing like the other dragonfolk. That figure stared at the dragon, repeating Salyacht over and over. Of course, the name had no meaning. I just chose it because it sounded good. I just chose the name because it sounded cool. Okay, our dragons are ferocious yet intelligent creatures. He seemed to understand right away that this was the name he had been given, and along with that, he also understood that he couldn't overpower me. When I released my grip, Salyacht immediately moved to the corner of the room. He backed into the corner, pressing his rear against it, and glared at me with frightened eyes. Salyacht, food, eat. I placed the food in front of the now docile Salyacht once more. A massive chunk of dragon meat. He glared at the food, then at me, and then roared again. Even knowing he couldn't win, he still refused to submit. Well, if he had submitted right away, then and there, he wouldn't have ended up in a place like this in the first place. True. That day, the meat went uneaten, but I didn't leave either. I began to understand what Lady Dola meant by feeling the dragon with your own skin. Wild dragons are temperamental and don't easily trust the dragonfolk. They are not like the tamed dragons ridden by the dragon warriors. I needed to understand that first. Or so, I thought. And so, I continued my staring contest with Salyacht. For a long, long time. One day passed, then two. The meat started to rot and smell. When it became clear it was no longer edible, I removed the meat from in front of Salyacht. I carried it to the disposal site and threw it away. What do you think I did next? I brought fresh meat and placed it in front of Salyacht again. I know, it was a stupid, stubborn, and repetitive thing to do, but I couldn't help it. It was a task entrusted to me by Lady Dola. I had no intention of giving up until I completed it. Yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't. That said, I didn't know any other way. I figured I considered different methods after Salyacht ate the meat. After all, I thought there was no way he wouldn't eat it eventually. I knew all too well how painful hunger could be, but Salyacht didn't eat. I mean, my mind immediately goes to the idea that depending on how the dragon got there, yeah, it could be not wanting to eat. Like, if it had a family, if it had, some hatchlings or something like that were taken out or something like that, and it feels dead. Or it had a previous owner, potentially. I doubt that because it feels like this is a wild dragon here that hasn't been tamed yet. But there's a lot of reasons why an animal wouldn't eat until it dies. As well as if they're extremely intelligent and very stubborn at the same time, they could starve themselves to death. 3 days passed, then 4, then 5. Still, he refused to eat. Naturally, I didn't eat either. I kept replacing the meat, continuing my staring contest with Salyacht. It was almost like we were competing in a fasting match. I don't remember how many days had passed. In the end, it was Salyacht who gave in first, but not by biting into the meat out of desperation. No, it collapsed from hunger. His body, pushed to its limits, gave out. He didn't even have the strength to keep his belly off the ground. He just slumped over, completely drained. Even so, his gleaming eyes remained fixed on me. He no longer had the strength to intimidate me. As for me, I was still fine. Perhaps it was the dragonfolk blood in my veins or the influence of my demon ancestry. But I can go on for about 100 days without eating. Still, I was shocked. Yeah, I would imagine that he probably has a good sense of how long he can go without eating because he was doing that a lot in his previous, life. Still, I was shocked. I never imagined that he would refuse to eat to the point of near starvation. As someone who knew the pain of hunger, I couldn't believe it. At the same time, I felt a sense of respect for Salyacht. To refuse to submit so strongly, to value his pride above his life. If I were in the position where I had to betray Lord Dragon God, and eating meat would mean betrayal, I would probably do the same. Better to die than to live in disgrace. That's how he was. There's actually significance to this statement right here. Sort of shows you again a little bit more into Laplace and how much he greatly appreciates the Dragon God. That he's right here saying that he'd be willing to starve to death rather than to disgrace that. Better to die than to live in disgrace. That's how he was. Not many can actually fall through with that. I decided to witness his death. Lady Dola had entrusted me with Salyacht's training. Her orders were, in essence, Lord Dragon God's orders. I couldn't abandon them. That said, I had been given permission to kill him if necessary. If that was the case, I thought I should at least let him die with his pride intact. Get a little bit of vibes of Rudius and Julie right here. If that's what you want. If that's what you want, I'll let you die. If that's what your choice is. Again, the meanings behind that thought process are completely different, obviously. Farewell, Salyacht. I won't forget your pride. At the very least, I'll stay by your side. I said that and sat down next to Salyak, not touching him, but closer than before. There, I faced Salyak head on. For an hour, or maybe 2, I stared at Salyak for a while. Salyak, in turn, kept glaring at me. I thought that time would stretch forever, until the moment death claimed Salyak, and the light faded from his eyes. But then, in a sudden moment, Salyak broke eye contact, as if he could no longer endure my gaze, and where he looked next was at the meat. He weakly moved his head, bringing his mouth closer to the meat. He was trying to eat it. I couldn't know what kind of struggle was happening inside of him, but I understood this. He had abandoned his pride and chose to cling to life. He wanted to live. I would think that probably with him moving close at that point probably changed the dragon's perspective, that he's not going to come over there and kill him, even when he's at his weakest. There's a trust that's created there. But his strength had already run out. With what little energy he had left, he managed to leave faint teeth marks on the meat. But he couldn't bite through it. I immediately stood up, grabbed the piece of meat, bit into it, chewed it. The meat was tough and sinewy. But with my strong jaws and sharp teeth, I tore it apart and chewed it thoroughly. Then I tossed the softened meat into Salyak's mouth. Though weak, Salyak managed to chew the softened meat and swallowed it. I was about to say, it's turned into like a bird mama bird feeding the baby bird. Just yakking food inside of its throat. After confirming he could eat, I repeated the process, chewing and feeding him bits of meat. As I chewed, I couldn't help but feel my own hunger. So every now and then, I swallowed some for myself. We continued like this until the first piece of meat was gone. I immediately ran to the storage room, brought back more meat, and placed it before him. By then, Salyak had regained a bit of strength. He wasn't able to stand on his own yet, but some energy had returned to his body, and his eyes were now glimmering with life as he glared at me. Still glaring. Still synthetic. Dragons are resilient creatures, so perhaps they digest quickly. That seemed plausible to me. Unbothered, I picked up another piece of meat, bit into it, chewed it, and swallowed. Then I pushed the remaining piece towards Salyak. It was as if to say, "This is how you eat it. Try it yourself." Salyak already knew how to eat meat. Cautiously, he stretched his neck forward and gave the piece a tentative lick. The taste of good meat, combined with the flavor of my saliva, seemed to ignite his hunger once again. Do what? What? Wait, what? What was the saliva? Anyways, unable to resist, he finally bit into the meat. Using his front legs to hold it down, he tore through the tough sinew with his sharp fangs, crunched through the bones, chewed, and swallowed. Salyak ate the dragon meat ravenously. Then, as if suddenly realizing something, he stopped. His gaze shifted to me, sitting on the other side of the meat, watching him. In that moment, Salyak carefully pushed the meat towards me with his front paw. Oh, is he saying join me? Is he saying join me? Cheesy crap. Refuge still got some cheesy stuff in ODT too. I paused for a few seconds, biting into the meat myself and chewing. I didn't know why, but it felt like I should eat with him. Chewing slowly, I passed the meat back to Salyak. He let out a pleased growl as he ate. Then, after a few bites, returned the meat to me. This exchange repeated a few times until the meat was gone. Aww. Then I put my stomach's growling. I don't know if that picked up on the mic. My stomach just growled. I haven't eaten anything all day. Then I placed my hand on Salyak's head and spoke. Salyak, I'll raise you. At the time, Salyak couldn't understand the language of the dragonfolk, but it seemed like he understood the intent behind my words. From that day forward, Salyak no longer feared me. This was my first step forward, a monumental one. Did you know? Failure might help a person grow, but no matter how much you fail, it won't move you forward. But success, even just once, will push you ahead. Yeah, I mean, that's true words. I mean, it's very easy to say to people, hey, don't worry, as long as you learn something from your failures, as long as you got something out of it, you're going to learn something, you're going to see what you're not supposed to do. Everything that you do, no matter if it's success or failure, is going to do some sort of benefit for you. But yes, you can't really claim that only failing is going to get you to anywhere. You have to make some sort of success at some point. You have to at some point, take a step forward. Chapter 7, The Dragon Tamer. Lady Dola came to inspect the facility about a year later. That day, I was sitting in Salyak's embrace, who was sprawled out on the ground, as if being cradled by the dragon. While we both gnawed on some meat, I was teaching Salyak a few words. This is surprising. Seeing me like that, Lady Dola had a rare look of surprise on her face. I wonder if she didn't expect this much of a bond between the two of them, or if, like, I was surprised that you did this so fast. You don't normally lay on top of each other after you beat him down in submission. What kind of bond do you make with a dragon, Laplace? What are you doing? But again, they kind of implied the idea that there's a lot of respect for the people that take care of these dragons, and again, you know, save their lives. It kind of gives the impression that these dragons are almost like, you know, dogs or cats as pets to the dragon folk. And so if they're sick or injured, if they can save their lives, they get a lot of respect for the people that take care of them. So being a bond like this might not be too much of a surprise for her. No, perhaps I should say that she was astounded. She's not someone who usually shows her emotions so plainly. Lady Dola, please forgive my rudeness. In response, I immediately tried to stand up, thinking that any disrespect towards her was absolutely unforgivable. My intention was to prepare to bow deeply. No, stay as you are, she said, stopping me with a gesture, her gaze fixed intently on Salyat. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. That young dragon has become this docile, has it? Under Lady Dola's probing gaze, Salyak stood up, lowering his head slightly, and then let out a growl, as if in a warning. Stop it, Salyak. This is Lady Dola, I said. At my words, Salyak immediately quieted down. However, the wariness in his eyes didn't completely vanish. He's like a threat. She's still a threat. I had grown close to Salyak, but that didn't mean that he had become fully tamed and majestic dragon, worthy of the dragonfolk. It simply meant that Salyak no longer feared me. This timid and overly cautious dragon had deemed me safe, but remained the same towards other dragonfolk. Even Lady Dola's subordinates found this puzzling. Normally, once a dragon submits to one of the dragonfolk, it grows accustomed to the others of their kind as well. But you're not a dragonfolk. To a dragon, specifically a dragon or another beast in general, another creature, they probably still view him as a completely different, like, species. In a society, an intelligent society, we learn eventually that, you know, there's a distinction, but that they're all the same. It's like if you meet somebody of a different race or whatever, you're going to go, we're all human, but yes, I acknowledge that you're a different race. With another creature, they're not going to make that distinction. They're not going to make that connection. So this dragon has given itself up to a demon dragonfolk, not the dragonfolk. I'm sorry, Lady Dola. He still doesn't trust anyone other than me. No, on the contrary, to have tamed him this much in just 1 year is impressive. How did you manage it? I shared meals with him and lounged around together. I find it hard to believe that was enough. Lady Dola furrowed her brows, still studying Salyak closely. Despite her calm demeanor, I could sense that Salyak was incredibly tense in her presence. It's kind of making me think that this is a special case dragon, which makes me kind of wonder why she gave him this task. If this is like a very kind of odd case, why would she entrust this to him? But again, it goes back to the idea of potentially it just being this quickly. Having spent so much time with him, even reclining together, I could tell he was scared. They're only afraid, that's all. If you give them a name, share meals with them, and help dispel their fear, they'll naturally begin to open their hearts to us. I see. So, that's your method? Yes, and I have a proven track record. By that time, it wasn't just Salyak. I also managed to tame 2 other dragons. Okay. They were the 2 dragons next to Salyak. Both of them were bigger than Salyak. Yet, by interacting with them in the same way, eating together and lounging around, they warmed up to me, grown accustomed to the other dragonfolk, and had already been moved to the other enclosures. So this is a specific case here. Okay. That goes against my theory earlier where they're going to trust him, but not dragonfolk. This is a very specific case of this dragon. Salyak was the only one who hadn't adapted. He was the most difficult and temperamental of all the red dragons. I've heard your results, but... Lady Dola seemed to be mulling over something. After hearing my report, she was likely grappling with whether what I was saying could possibly be true. If what I claimed was indeed true, then it would challenge the methods that Lady Dola and her people had relied on for thousands of years. Well, it was the method. And to think it would come from a rookie who she had personally trained for decades. It wasn't surprising she had doubts. Well, it depends on what kind of the success rate they have, because what we're kind of implying here is that there's only a 2 in 3 chance here. Only 66% of what he has worked on has been successful. Technically, Salyak is a case of a failure because it wouldn't adapt to other dragonfolks. Of course, I had no intentions of undermining her teachings, but I had managed to do something that was thought impossible. And what was that? It was rehabilitating a failed taming subject. That's right. Salyak was a dragon that had failed to be tamed. Lady Dola's taming method started with provoking a dragon into attacking. It's just going to lay out what she did to him, what she did to Laplace. Lady Dola's taming method started out by provoking a dragon into attacking, then beating him down to establish dominance. Most dragons would learn from this experience and understand that the dragon folks were not to be defied. But occasionally, there was dragons that didn't respond to this approach. Such dragons would do everything in their power to escape from what they perceived was a terrifying, unbeatable enemy. In other words, they saw the dragon folk as an invincible threat rather than a master to obey. Once that happened, there was no hope for bringing the dragon into submission. Dragons like that were deemed irredeemable and were put down. Again, what is the rate of it? What is the actual rate of it? But again, this is already saying this is actually one failed attempt here. So he's technically reviving that lost attempt there. Cruel, you say? You can only say that because you're living a peaceful life right now. A red dragon, left to roam freely, would inevitably become a threat. If you let one escape, it could lead to deaths of many comrades. So, if he won't submit, you kill him. Then you eat his meat. Simple as that. Yeah. This is like sort of reminds me immediately, like what comes to mind is Frieden. Like the whole idea of like, you can say that because you're in this world, you're in this position right here, that you can say, oh, let's all be kumbaya. Let's take care of the animals. Let's not harm the other animals. Let's all live together. But it's like, you can only say that because you're able to live side by side with them. It's a world of peace right now. You're not constantly trying to fight to survive. You're not always worried about, do I even exit this cave right here because I'm going to immediately get swooped up by a dragon and killed immediately. This is a kill or be killed world here. This is the threat. These things, again, as I mentioned with the early stories of this world, these dragons were eating the dragon folk. They were the prey for the dragons. And they had to do this in order to survive. You can say this on your high horse about how great it is. It's similar to the whole Friven situation where everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're obviously, humans and they can't be harmed and hunt down like what Friven does. And it's like, you say that, but look what the demons do. Then when they craft a weapon, what do they do with the weapon? They sit there and kill every human in front of them because they just want to test out the weapon. They're monsters. How do you protect yourself from that? It's kill or be killed. That's the situation. You can only say what you say because you live a very peaceful and very blessed life. The fact they were given choice to submit in the first place is already more mercy than they deserve. Yeah. Still, putting down a failed dragon was always the most disheartening task. All the time and effort poured into him would vanish in an instant. That's why rookies were assigned to handle failed dragons. They were made to experiment with various methods and learn that some dragons simply wouldn't submit, no matter what. In that process, rookies would come to understand the dangers of such dragons and the risk of being killed during training. Okay, that explains why specifically he was given this task. And this is something that they all do. There was like a side of me that almost thought that it was going to be like a case where she specifically wanted him to look at this one thing, but no, it seems like they all go through this whole process. And I can see that. It's just kind of what seems like, let's throw them into the fire completely. Let them learn how tough this whole situation is, and again, the worst parts of it. Eventually, they would have to kill the defiant dragon themselves. That way, they'd learn a valuable lesson. The dragons they see every day were fundamentally different than the wild ones. However, I had a knack for dealing with such dragons. Perhaps it was because of my experience as a wild child in the demon world. I could tell the dragons were simply afraid. Yeah. And there's nobody else that's going to be working in this facility that's going to have the same experience as he does. It's lived experiences that help you sort of navigate situations differently. So I used a different approach, one that didn't rely on beating them down. Oh yeah, apparently because that's been done already. That's why, ironically, I never learned what it meant for a dragon to be truly defiant. Even now, I believe that with the right approach, you can connect with any dragon. Very well. Lady Dola, after much deliberation, clapped her hands decisively. You will be in charge of the dragons sent here for the time being. She then issued her orders. A remarkable person, isn't she? She chose results over her pride. That's something only her loyalty to Lord Dragon God could make possible. Her decisions were always guided by whether it would benefit Lord Dragon God and ultimately the Dragon World. Yes, 100% I agree here. The idea that she'd be willing to see that he did something that he wasn't technically normally supposed to do. Like, normally this is to break people and to make them understand how difficult this stuff is and that you're going to lose these dragons. He's not technically learning that lesson. He's just overcoming the trial itself. Her pride would probably push her to go, no, you did it wrong. Get those other two dragons back here. Put them down now. You're doing this the wrong way. We're supposed to do it this way. But instead, she's going, you fixed something. You overcame something and you found a resolve for it. A good boss sees that and goes, okay, let's retool everything here because we just found a way around a problem that we've always faced. I would argue we still have a problem here in the idea that one of the dragons is only connected to him, and it's technically still a failure. It's a dragon he can have, that's perfectly fine, but it's not going to be a dragon that's going to be put out there for somebody else to just jump onto. And again, they're supposed to be taming these and training these for other people to ride them. But yes, again, I like this little sign here of kind of overcoming that pride. Even in the dragon world of the distant past, there weren't many people who could cast aside their pride like that. Do your best to tame as many dragons as you can and get them ready for training. In the end, she never once referred to that room as the room for failed dragons awaiting execution. Maybe she was being considerate of me, but knowing her keen intelligence, she must have realized that it was no longer the kind of room it used to be. Yeah. There could be a side of it that they don't really like the idea that they have to do this. Again, they could be eating the meat, and they could be taming these dragons for flight, but they could still appreciate them as beings. Again, for a lot of these people, when they bring their dragons to this place, they want their dragons saved. They want them to medically treat them or whatever. From that day, my work got busier. There weren't many dragons that failed training, but Lady Dola made arrangements to have those that did to be sent over from the training facilities across the dragon world. Each one trembled, growled, and tried to flee the moment they saw me. Some were severely injured and on the brink of death, revealing just how harsh the dragon taming methods were. I couldn't bond with every single dragon either. So there's failures. No matter how much effort I put in, there were some who just couldn't open their hearts to me. Well, I mean, Salyact was on the brink of death. For those stubborn cases, Salyact was a great help. Whenever Salyact spotted one of these dragons, he would approach and say something to them. What exactly he said, I couldn't understand. Although I taught him the dragon god language, I never learned dragon speech from him. But he certainly said something to the dragons. Sometimes it wasn't just words. He'd lightly tap them with his tail or gently coil it around them. It was a signal of trust and reassurance, where dragons use their tails to calm and soothe others. At the time, though, I didn't know that. At first, I thought it might be some kind of courtship gesture. Salyact was much better at winning over hearts than I was. Or perhaps I should say he excelled at winning over dragon hearts. Well, either way, after spending just a few days with Salyact, the dragons would quickly settle down. Even after they left my care and transitioned to regular training, they remained more obedient than other dragons, and fiercely brave in battles too, which made them excellent subjects. Yeah, technically, again, with the other ones, it's teaching them to fear the dragonfolk. And in a case of fear, when it comes to battles, they're less likely to keep fighting ferociously against their opponent for the sake of the one they fear, because their fear gets overtaken by another fear. Whereas if you create a bond of trust and, cooperation and, again, breaking bread together, you're now forming sort of a relationship, a bond that, again, would be more willing to lose their life over the one that's, taming them. But yeah, I wasn't really expecting the idea of having Salyact actually be involved in this whole process, which makes sense. Again, if they communicate with each other, they can go over and go, hey man, I went through this too. Just accept it. Come on, just accept it, man. Those that resisted taming to the bitter end likely had the potential for such excellence in the first place. Salyact and I worked together to tame such dragons and sent them off one after another, although Salyact himself refused to warm up to anyone but me. Because of this, my reputation began to rise. Dragons that no other taming facility could tame, those were the ones I could handle, and it became apparent that these once defiant dragons turned out to be superior to those that submitted from the start. Again, makes sense. Rumors spread of an outstanding tamer producing exceptional dragons. Even new tamers who came in after me started seeking my advice. Of course, I shared everything I was doing with them. I didn't think my methods as particularly special or worth hiding after all. Most of them didn't achieve the same results as me. Even so, the number of dragons marked for termination decreased, and the number of high-quality dragons increased. This led to changes in the taming methods. My methods were incorporated into the official taming guidelines. I wonder how much time had passed by then. 100 years or so, maybe? At some point, I became the head of the team responsible for retraining failed dragons. I assumed that would be the case from the very beginning. It was interesting because they almost made it out like nobody else was able to kind of pull it off like he was, but it seemed like they're incorporating, so obviously it's something that's working for other people. I even had subordinates. Not that the position carried any actual title, though. Still, I had to earn respect amongst the dragon tamers. An incredible tamer has appeared. He's a half-demon, but he's a dragon god's adopted child.
It seems he's also a disciple of Lady Dilla. Young people should watch and learn from his methods. There's much they could take inspiration from. I was surprised. I took pride in returning to Lord Dragon God's residence, because I could feel that I was being useful to Lord Dragon God. Every day, I share stories with Lord Dragon God, Lady Lunaria, and the servants about the dragons I had trained that day. It was a truly fulfilling time. Those were the happiest days of my life. Flag! There's the flag right there. I did feel that we were getting a little bit too positive and things were getting too comfortable. It's like we're going to get to a point where at some point something's going to break. I loved many dragons, and they loved me back. Lady Lunaria and Lord Dragon God accepted me too. If I were to name the happiest and most fulfilling time of my life, it would undoubtedly be those days, which implies that it's all going to go downhill from here. At that moment, Laplace noticed a change in Marcelina's expression. Her face, or rather, her physical expression, shifted in a very literal way. She puffed out her cheeks in a pout. What's the matter? When you say those were the most happiest and most fulfilling days, does that mean it's different now? Right now, Laplace led a modest life. For a specific purpose, he descended from the mountain a few times a year, but otherwise, he spent his days cooped up in his room, writing. In other words, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was living alone with Rosalina. Well, yes. Rosalina, I hate to say it, but things are different now. I have a mission to fulfill, and that leaves little room for emotion like happiness or joy. Again, because the assumption here is that at least this is post, the world's being destroyed and everything, and he has this one purpose, and he's driven to this one purpose he has to fulfill, which is to gather this information. Rosalina felt a wave of sadness wash over her. If he wasn't happy being with her, then why was she here at all? Maybe she would pack her things and leave tomorrow. What? What are we doing here? Rosalina like him? I mean, are they in a relationship here? Or is she like super crushing on him? And now she's like, wait, you don't like me? I'm gonna leave. But, Rosalina. Yes? As you know, I really don't like being alone. My current life is filled with anxiety and unease. And if I were by myself, I might be crushed under the weight of it all. That's big. That's big. Before he had happiness because he was in a comfort state. He had everything given to him. He was working, obviously. He's doing his job. But he's surrounded by support. People that will support him no matter what. And now, again, at the time frame that we're kind of in here, he's got nothing. He's got this one purpose he's got to go towards. It's nicer for him to say that I'm comfortable because you're at my side. That means a lot more than saying that I used to have like a great amount of happiness. Is to say that despite the fact that I have weight on my shoulders now, massive amount of weight's on my shoulder right now, you're giving me support that I need. That nobody else can. It's making me wonder who the hell this Rosalina is. You saved me from that, Rosalina. I'm really grateful for your help. Yes, master. Rosalina's expression brightened. Even someone as seemingly useless as her could still contribute to Laplace in some way. Hearing that directly from Laplace himself brought her immense joy. Again, I thought that she was just going to be a tool for, like, telling Laplace's story. Oh, here's a random person that, like, he met at some point and is going to be our storytelling method here. Who is this person now is the question mark. But, Master, I have a question. What is it, Rosalina? I asked you about how you first met Mr. Dragon, but Mr. Dragon himself hasn't actually appeared in your story. Huh? I assumed that we just talked about that dragon. Laplace scratched his head, running his hand through his mottled hair. What are you talking about, Rosalina? He did come up, didn't he? It's Salyak. Yeah. The red dragon that lives behind our house and rules over this mountain. He's the first dragon I ever met. Wait, what? Rosalina let out a loud gasp. At the same time, she felt a little embarrassment. Now that he mentioned it, it was obvious. So why had she thought that the dragon in the story was someone else? It must have been because she'd never made the connection. Or she never heard the name. After all, how could the lazy red dragon, always lunging around, endlessly eating, rarely flying, and obediently, not just to Laplace, but even to her, be the same ferocious, unruly, and grumpy Salyak from the story? Again, I'm surprised that she never heard the name. Mr. Dragon was Mr. Salyak? That's right. Thinking back, Rosalina recalled Laplace occasionally referring to the dragon as Salyak. Since she never paid much attention to the name, the realization left her stunned. God damn, girl. That Salyak is now the leader of the Red Dragons. The king. Wow. The king of the Red Dragons, Salyak. Although, it seems like he's getting a bit senile these days, though. As Laplace said this, a grumpy growl echoed from behind the house. Apparently he heard that. Stupid. Haha, it looks like he's bad. Wow, I had no idea Mr. Dragon was someone so important. Of course, but that's why, Rosalina. You must always show him proper respect. Yes, master. Rosalina responded with enthusiasm, knowing that the dragon she cared for was such a distinguished figure, gave her newfound determination. Oh, at that moment, Laplace glanced out the window. A large full moon had risen into the night sky. It seemed that evening had fallen without him noticing. Sorry, Rosalina, but I need to step out for a bit. We'll continue this story some other time. Yes, master. Rosalina didn't complain and saw Laplace off. After all, she was an elf. While she wasn't as long-lived as Laplace, she still had plenty of time. Even if they were apart for a while, she knew she would hear the rest of the story someday. In the meantime, she would make sure to keep the house tidy for his return. Letting out a yawn, she said, For now, I think I'll go to bed. Still, she couldn't fight off sleepiness. To recover energy for the day ahead, Rosalina returned to her bed and drifted off to sleep. Again, this chapter kind of made me kind of want to start knowing more about Rosalina and who the hell she is and why she's here. Again, my assumption is kind of be similar to, Orsted and Nanahoshi. At some point, came across them, just for some reason, decided to bring them with them, and then over time, they just kind of be this person that's always their side. These dragon folk just go around snagging up waifus. Just casually snagging up waifus. Chapter 8. An unusual event. In the unassuming house nestled in the Dragon Roar Mountain, a young girl busily carried items back and forth as always. What is it? Water? Meat? A closer look would reveal that she was transporting something different today. Phew, there. It was books. She was relocating books from the study to another room, carefully arranging them in an orderly fashion. Perhaps she was up to some mischief? No, that wasn't it. She was air drying them. The paper Laplace used for his books was made from dragon hide. Renowned for its durability, these books could endure for tens of thousands of years without maintenance. However, prolonged exposure to humidity and insects would inevitably accelerate their decay. Thus, regular air drying was necessary. I guess as much should be enough for today. She said this with a satisfied nod, but the sheer volume of books in the study was overwhelming. It wasn't feasible to dry them all in a single day. Instead, she tackled one bookshelf per month, working at a manageable pace. Ugh, I'm beat. Rosalina groaned, stretched her arms, and then supporting herself on her aching lower back. At this moment, an entire bookshelf worth of ancient books was now laid out in neat rows in front of Rosalina. These weren't just old books. They were ancient. Oh yeah, you emphasize the idea of how long they're supposed to last with this leather, which also kind of makes me kind of wonder about the library labyrinth. And again, that was supposed to be something they added with the light novel series versus the web novel, but it's like, it kind of makes me wonder, was Refugien really kind of thinking that far into it, and the idea that, yes, technically this library labyrinth should have all this information. It should have all this stuff wrote down. Again, if it exists, he's writing it. But even with the library labyrinth, I don't think they imply that you were doing anything written on anything but paper. And it's like, how does that stuff last that long? Unless he just rewrites it as it decays. Today, she had chosen volumes from the oldest shelf in the study. As she looked over the books, a sudden curiosity sparked within her. I wonder what's written in these. From what Rosalina knew, Laplace spent his time doing three main activities: traveling, telling her stories, and writing. Since Rosalina didn't always demand his attention, it meant that he was writing almost constantly whenever he stayed at home. She had observed him for long stretches, writing tirelessly without eating or sleeping. Whatever he was documenting must have been incredibly important. Yeah, the assumption there is that he's going down from the mountain, finding something, getting some information, some intel, some old inscriptions, some technique, then coming back there and writing it in the book, getting it ready for somebody else. I think he even mentioned at some point with, I think, Bodygatti's story, that there was this Laplace that would come down from the mountain every now and then, and the kids were told to not disrespect him or whatever. Laplace had never forbidden her from reading the books in the house. In fact, he had once told her that as long as she didn't damage, discard, or burn them, she could read whatever she liked. But I can't read them anyways. The issue lay in the writing itself. The symbols and script Laplace used were vastly different than the human language Rosalina was familiar with. She could read the human language, the widely used language, across the continent, even amongst her kin. But these ancient books were written in something else. According to Laplace, they were penned in the ancient dragon god language. Thus, they were indecipherable to her. Newer books, however, were different. Laplace had written them in the human language. Perhaps he thought it would be more accessible for future readers than a lost ancient language. Did she change his mind? She's like trying to read it, and he's like, Ah, damn, that's kind of a mistake, wasn't it? Yeah, I should probably change that for the future. Still, why hadn't he gone back and rewritten the... I was like, my other question. Sure enough, it brings it up. Why hadn't he gone back and rewritten the earlier works in human language? Maybe it was just too much trouble. Better to add more information and hope that someone could figure it out. Oh, just then, Rosalina noticed a book sitting at the edge of the row that she had organized. The only one written in human language. The title read, A Guide to Translating the Ancient Dragon God. Oh, that's why he hasn't translated them yet. I just put a book there. Yeah, you guys can figure it out with this thing. The title read, A Guide to Translating the Ancient Dragon God Language. It seemed Laplace, being the wise man he was, had opted to create a dictionary rather than painstakingly rewrite each of his old books. With this, I might actually be able to read them. Excited, Rosalina grabbed the guidebook and a particularly old, tattered volume she had assumed was probably the first to be written. She sat down and pored over the index of the guide, cross-referencing it with the ancient text as she painstakingly deciphered the title. Makari, Dragon General. The Mission of the Dragon Generals, Part 32. After nearly 15 minutes of effort, she finally pieced it together. The title read, The Mission of the Dragon Generals, Part 32. Rosalina recognized the term Dragon General. Laplace had mentioned it in his stories, the title given to the 5 Dragon Kings, who served as the trusted subordinates of the Dragon God. Laplace himself had once served under one of them, the armored Dragon King, Dola. Huh? But a question arose in her mind. Laplace had been Dola's subordinate, so why had he written a book about the mission of the Dragon Generals? Was he ordered to do so? Or he became one? Perhaps the answer lay in the elusive part 1 of the series, which should be around somewhere. Which is interesting because I think she said that was like one of the first shelves over there. Huh. But at this rate, it'll take me forever to find it. She sighed. That said, just reading aloud, the title had already taken quite some time. After all that effort, she only managed to read about 10 words, and there was over 100 books in front of her. The sheer number of books, combined with the effort required to decode each title, made the task daunting. Reading all of them was a monumental challenge, let alone locating one specific volume. At that moment, her sharp ears caught the sound of great wings flapping in the distance. There was only one creature in these mountains that made such a noise approaching the house. Yes, it was Salyak, the red dragon who resided behind their house. And riding atop that dragon was none other than her beloved master, Laplace. Beloved? First her being upset earlier, now beloved? We're just like slowly building in some romance here. Rosalina jumped up and dashed out of the drawing room. She sprinted to the front door, just in time to see Laplace stepping into the house. Welcome back, master. I'm home, Rosalina. Did you finish the air drying? Yes. Well done. That's my girl. Hee. Her face lit up with delight as Laplace patted her head. But then she remembered the question that had been nagging her. Hey, master. There was something I was wondering about earlier. What is it? Laplace tilted his head curiously. Rosalina explained her earlier train of thought. All the books on the shelves. You wrote them, didn't you? Yes, that's right. Then why did you write a book called The Mission of the Dragon Generals? You were Lady Dola's subordinate, weren't you? Was it something Lady Dola ordered you to do? Oh, that's amazing. Rosalina, you can read the ancient dragon god language? Rosalina is always growing and learning every day. Hiding the fact that she had a guidebook, Rosalina puffed out her modest chest with pride. You can read it. Then you must understand, don't you? It's all written in the book after all. Oh, it backfired on her. You can read the whole thing then, I guess, right? However, shallow lies are quick to unravel. Well, sorry. Actually, I only managed to read the title using translation guide. I figured as much. Laughing, Laplace walked deeper into the house. He placed some jumbled items onto the floor, likely brought from the lower realm, and sat down on a chair. He was motioning to Rosalina to sit on the nearby chair as well. Let's have a meal together for once. It's been a while, and I've gotten hungry. Yes, leave it to me, master. Overjoyed, Rosalina enthusiastically began preparing a meal. Cooking for Laplace, who rarely ate, was one of Rosalina's quiet pleasures. Whenever Laplace did eat, he was always starving, making him savor every bite with delight. As Rosalina was leaning forward, as she worked over the stove, while she poured all her skills into the meal, Laplace's voice came in from behind her, breaking the silence. While we eat, I'll answer your questions. His tone carried a weight of reminiscing about distant days long past. It was a voice filled with both joy and regret, as well as a sense of helplessness. As I said earlier, he said this is the most greatest point of his life, the most joyous point of his life. It means it's all going to go downhill from here. Laplace spoke in a proud voice, yet tone was tinged with shadows. I wrote the book because I am one of the dragon generals. And so Laplace began to recount his story, a tale from long, long ago, from the distant age of myths. Feels like things gonna start getting all screwed up. I'm gonna have some certain somebody come in here and start messing with things. Now, where do I begin? I suppose from there. Laplace. One day, when everything was progressing smoothly, Lady Dola called for me. She was always busy flying around, so it was rare for her to visit the taming facilities of Chaos in Dragon Roar Mountain. However, whenever she came, she would almost always summon me for combat training. She claimed it was to ensure that I wasn't neglecting my daily training, but the truth was that few could match her in a fight. Fortunately, I was strong enough to serve as her sparring partner, someone that she can actually train with. Today as well. Sorry to trouble you. On such days, I would delegate my work to my subordinates and accompany Lady Dola to the military training grounds, and then I would let her beat me to a pulp, to her heart's content. She left me battered every time. Even though I could hold my own, I wasn't strong enough to defeat one of the 5 dragon generals. That said, sparring with Lady Dola regularly allowed me to rapidly improve my skills. Perhaps it was my ego, but I had become so strong that no ordinary dragon warrior could stand a chance against me now. I have something to discuss. Normally, training ended once I was thoroughly defeated, but that day, Lady Dola spoke to me with an unusually serious expression. Naturally, I had no reason to refuse her. We decided to head to the flight training grounds to talk. When it came to ideal places where Lady Dola and I would have our conversations, the first place that came to mind were either Lord Dragon God's mansion or this spot. The reason for choosing this place was likely because it was a spot that offered a clear view of Chaos's townscape, a fitting place for our conversation. Your recent achievements have been remarkable. It's all thanks to your guidance, Lady Dola. No, you've done things I never taught you. Even Maxwell commented one day. He has done a good job, teasing me a bit. That is an honor. If you continue as you are, you will fulfill your duty. The duties in question refer to 2 of 3 objectives laid out by Lord Dragon God, reducing the animosity towards hybrids amongst the dragonfolk, and demonstrating goodwill towards the demons. Indeed, the work of retraining was becoming increasingly important. The taming methods had advanced so much that people were saying the term retraining itself would soon become obsolete. What I had accomplished had held such profound meaning. I have a request for you. I was surprised at the word request. After all, Lady Dola had never asked me for anything before. Anything you need. Naturally, I responded this way. I live for the sake of Lord Dragon God, but I also owed so much to Lady Dola, and anything she requested would undoubtedly align with Lord Dragon God's wishes. That's why I was ready to comply without hesitation. For a while, I want you to take over my duties. Take over your duties? Yes, in short, I want you to oversee all the taming facilities in the dragon world. Is she leaving, or is she going to have a child? Is she going to have a child for 5 freaking decades? May I ask why? Sorry, my mating season will arrive. Yeah, there's... Oh, these people and having children for 5 freaking million years. Soon, my mating season will arrive. I will lay eggs. And they lay eggs? Wait, that's different than Lunaria. This is different. She gotta be dropping some eggs. I'm gonna keep my comments to myself. Dragon folks had incredibly long lifespans. They lived for tens of thousands of years. They were essentially immortal. But in exchange, their mating season was brief, occurring once every few thousand years. Thus, dragon folks who entered their mating seasons were obligated to participate actively. That's... Congratulations. Thank you. Who is your partner? People need partners to have children. Perhaps it's a stimulating topic for Rosalina. Crystal, of the 5 dragon generals, our mating season happened to align, and Lord Dragon God expects strong offspring from us. It seemed the dragon generals had many children, but unfortunately, I'd never met them. The dragon folk had a weak concept of family. The eggs they lay were not warmed by their parents. Instead, they are incubated and raised by professional caretakers in the hatching complex. Of course, they knew who their parents were, but the children of the dragon generals weren't treated any different from the others. Apparently, Lady Dola had already birthed several children. Some had reached adulthood and were working as dragon warriors or at taming facilities, while others had perished in battles against dragons. So apparently the dragon folks have a similar, method of raising children as the dwarves. The dwarves were like that. They talked about the idea that the dwarves were once they had children, there's everybody raised it. The town itself raised the children. Very similar concept to it. I mean, there's a lot of people. The warriors of the desert, beggar continent, those people were similar things to this. it kind of makes me wonder if, I mean, specifically those three groups at least are all kind of the same thought process here, or at least from the same origins here. However, it seemed like this would be the first time a child was born to two dragon generals. The belief was that the higher the parents' abilities, the stronger the offspring would be. A child of two dragon generals, the expectations were high. That's why I want you to take charge of the taming facilities during the egg-laying period. Will you accept? The work entrusted to the 5 dragon generals by Lord Dragon God would now be my responsibility to carry out. Nothing could have been more of an honor. I nearly wept on the spot. It made me realize just how highly Lady Dola regarded me. I'm honored that you have chosen me. Of course, I offered my deepest bow, then and there, and accepted the mission. Moving on up. Around 30 years had passed since then. Lady Dola successfully conceived and relocated to a hatching complex located a few tens of kilometers south of Chaos. I accompanied her during the move, and it was quite a fascinating place. Its appearance was reminiscent of a beehive. There were numerous private chambers lined up, and pregnant women would lay their eggs there. The rooms were maintained at a constant temperature and humidity, ensuring that the eggs would hatch almost this. I'm starting to get like, okay, a lot of details in this whole process. It's going to be real hard for me not to make some inappropriate joke in the title. The rooms were maintained at a constant temperature and humidity, ensuring that the eggs would hatch almost on their own. Each chamber then became the hatchling's personal room as well. However, the gestation period for the dragonfolk is incredibly long. They are, after all, a race that can live for hundreds of thousands of years. The period during which they carry eggs in their wombs spanned 50 years. An incubation period for the eggs is another 50 years, which I'm guessing is sort of lining up with what Lunarian's going through. That just makes me think that whole situation right there is going for about 100 years. Which makes me wonder if she's carrying a egg. Anyways, carrying an egg inside of her, or if it's just a baby that's in there. And as with all species, pregnant women are extraordinarily sensitive and temperamental. I'm just reading the book, by the way. I'm just reading what he wrote. For the dragon folk, this sensitivity often manifests as extreme aggression during pregnancy. He has to be at her side because nobody else can keep her. Anyway, that is precisely why they created dedicated facilities separate from ordinary residential areas so pregnant women could focus solely on giving birth. This is especially the case for fertilized eggs. I thought I was going to say because they don't want them to destroy the city when they get pissed off at something. By the time Lady Dola entered the facility, she became utterly aggressive. She didn't attack everything in sight, but she would lash out over the smallest provocations, venting her anger at anything and anyone nearby. It wasn't rare for me to be injured by Lady Dola, but this is the first time I had seen her act so irrationally violent. The details here. Didn't have to be here, but we're getting the details here. I was constantly nursing fresh wounds over the past 30 years. Still, I managed to carry out Lady Dola's duties without issue. My responsibilities involved inspecting and managing all the taming facilities across the dragon world. For these travels, I rode on Salyak. That temperamental red dragon remained loyal only to me to the very end. From my perspective, taking Salyak around to the taming facilities wasn't a bad idea. Salyak would converse with the other dragons and had a knack for persuading even the most stubborn of them. Again, they were talking about the fact they were sending them to his facility, so I guess he's going to meet them there. Wherever we went, we proved indispensable. To be honest, the reason I rose to the position of overseer of the taming facilities was largely thanks to him. I mean, yeah, technically, he was mentioning the idea when there was cases where they wouldn't accept him, Salyak would come into the picture and fix it. Becoming the overseer naturally spread my name throughout the dragon world. People began to call me a genius at raising high-quality dragons. Yeah, we mentioned that before. With my growing reputation, fewer individuals looked down on me. Some even offered me deep bows of respect as I returned to Lord Dragon God's mansion. Of course, there were still those who disliked me for being half-demon, but people began acknowledging my abilities. I'd wake up in the morning and fly the taming facility. I'd inspect my facility with Salyak, handling unruly dragons. Sometimes I'd mount Salyak and travel to other towns. The work remained the same no matter where I went, but the faces I encountered would change, and my presence became more widely known. When I returned to the mansion, Lady Lenaria would be there, and the attendants would serve me a warm meal. Sometimes even Lord Dragon God would join us. I recount the day's events with them. It was what you might call a moment of family bonding. Those 30 years were truly peaceful. There was no battles, no rigorous training, no urgency, just steadily doing what needed to be done while waiting for the inevitable end. It was a slow and tranquil passage of time. However, such calm days never last forever. Hey there. I'm just waiting for that. Hey there. Every calm is eventually interrupted by a turning point. The very first turning point, the very first one, few can walk the same path endlessly. Such a turning point came for me, or rather, for the entire drag. I was joking, and we're going there. Okay, we're going there already. I thought we'd kind of ease into it with like maybe a quick conflict, and then that gets resolved, and then the big thing happens. A monumental turning point. It was around the time that we received word that Lady Dola's egg-laying was imminent, that the dragon world was struck by tragic news. The death of one of the 5 dragon generals, the still Dragon King, Crystal. Damn! Dola over there ready to start popping out the baby and Crystal dead. The question is going to be who. Who killed or what killed him? General Crystal was found at the northern edge of the dragon world, near the nest of the king dragons. His body was discovered in a brutal state, limbs torn apart, and his brain completely drained. No matter how resilient the dragon folks might be, no one could survive such injuries. By the time he was found, he was already deceased. Around him lay the corpses of his dragon guard and several king dragons. At first glance, it seemed like he had fought the king dragons and either lost or reached a draw. But General Crystal was not someone who would ever lose to mere king dragons. The entire incident was shrouded in mystery. The death of one of the 5 dragon generals is difficult to convey just how significant that was for the dragon world. Again, these were individuals that essentially were put into play of the highest skill to fulfill the role that this dragon god was doing. These are individuals that are above anybody else. They're basically like, in terms of like the timeline of Rudeus and Mushoku Tensei, it's like basically they're the gods of different skill levels. The 5 dragon generals possessed power second only to Lord Dragon God. They were the strongest warriors of the dragon folk. Their strength was unfathomable. And yeah, technically he has to tango with Dola. Sorry. Their strength was unfathomable, even compared to regular members of their kind. If they got serious, they could collapse entire mountains with ease. At the time, I was already quite powerful, but I still wouldn't have stood a chance against them, even as someone who often served as sparring partner for Lady Dola's training. If she had gone all out, I had been reduced to shreds in an instant. That's how powerful the 5 dragon generals were. And now one of them, Crystal, was dead. It's interesting to kind of keep noting how powerful the 5 dragon generals are compared to specifically Laplace, because we have all these stories about how powerful at least, Demon God Laplace was and how much of a threat he is to the future and everything like that. Here it's just like, yeah, they'd beat me to a pulp. Everyone had the same thought. Who could have done this? And how? That's the important question, is how. There were very few capable of killing a dragon general. Within the dragon world, only the other 4 dragon generals or Lord Dragon God himself could have done it. There was also the possibility of a mutant monster, but no matter how ferocious or powerful a monster might be, it was hard to believe it could kill a dragon general. And if such a dangerous monster existed, it was strange that no reports of it surfaced. Monsters tend to gravitate towards areas teeming with life after all. In any case, such a catastrophic event occurred, and Lord Dragon God convened a meeting. The remaining 4 dragon generals were summoned by Lord Dragon God. When I heard this, I found it somewhat unusual. To me, Lord Dragon God seemed like someone who made decisions on his own. However, it was an established custom to hold such meetings when a major crisis arose in the dragon world. The meeting took place at Lord Dragon God's mansion. I was also in attendance, as I was acting as Lady Dola's proxy, since she was heavily pregnant and close to laying her egg. In one of the chambers of Lord Dragon God's mansion, there was a massive stone table with 6 chairs around it. I had known about the setup, but seeing the 5 dragon generals gathered there was nothing short of awe-inspiring. Well, 2 of them were absent, though. There was the dragon general, Slillard, with green-silver scales and fragile, ephemeral eyes. Dragon General Chaos, with black silver scales and deep, penetrating eyes. Dragon General Maxwell, with blue-silver scales and resolute, strong eyes. And finally, the great Lord Dragon God, with silver scales that reflect no other color and eyes that seem to encompass everything. Sitting there, I felt completely out of place. Until Lord Dragon God spoke, the others would merely stare at the single empty seat, the chair where Crystal should have been seated. I can't believe it, Crystal's dead. But the one who broke the silence was Chaos. I hadn't interacted much with him, but I'd heard that he was rather an eccentric man. Under the orders of Lord Dragon God, he had been responsible for crafting the weapons used by the dragonfolk. Back then, weapons were rudimentary at best. Swords and spears carved from dragon fangs, or armor pieced together with dragon scales. Do you think those sounded far from crude? Perhaps by today's standards, they might seem impressive. But back then, the dragonfolks trusted their own claws and scales, imbued with dragon aura, far more than such tools. Yeah, I can see that. I can't imagine Crystal being killed by king dragons, or even by some monster. Something about this feels off. Maxwell was the one to say this. He was short and frivolous. Most people formed the same impression of Maxwell upon meeting him. Compared to the other dragonfolk, Maxwell was particularly small. On top of that, he always wore a carefree grin and spoke with an unrefined tone. Many wondered how someone like him could be one of the 5 dragon generals. There were those who whispered such doubts behind his back, but Lady Dola had once said, "At the very end, anyone who truly knows Maxwell will not mock him." That's because, despite his appearance, Maxwell was capable, diligent, hardworking, and fiercely loyal. The last part. As long as that last part there is like Edis. Yep, I accept you, because you like Rudius. He was responsible for exterminating monsters across the dragon world. The fact that the average dragonfolk suffered so few casualties from monsters was largely thanks to him. Maxwell was also the one who personally inspected Crystal's body at the site, while others in his team concluded it was the work of monsters. Maxwell was the one who reportedly shook his head and insisted, "This can't be right," because Maxwell understood the strength of the 5 dragon generals. He couldn't believe a mere monster had killed Crystal. I was about to kind of start predicting, and I'm already seeing the quote underneath here. They're already going in the direction of demon. The assumption here is going to be somebody of equal quality that is in another world. So a demon general, like their version of a 5 dragon general of the demon realm. I can see that being like an obvious conclusion there, again, because currently what's going on is that for the Lord Dragon God, he's trying to fight this belief that they're wanting to destroy them. And there could be this idea that at some point, they're going to come over here to try to attack first. Somebody from that side is going to want to stop the dragonfolk from invading them. A random person that's extremely powerful that wants to take action on their own without, the support of the rest of the demon world. That's an obvious conclusion to come to. Yeah, the concern there, obviously, for me is more in the idea of, again, this oddity about these worlds and how there's this imbalance that is creating problems. Again, what I was mentioning before is the random teleportations, people disappearing, whatever. Technically, that could go to the wayside to an idea that there's somebody that's rogue attacking the dragonfolk of this world. If that's the case, it must be a demon, says Szilard, speaking up at last. As the leader of the 5 dragon generals, Szilard acted as a unifying force for the entire dragonfolk race. His duties were numerous, but they primarily involved overseeing matters within the cities. In reality, when Lord Dragon God was absent, he effectively governed the dragon world on his behalf. It wouldn't be exaggeration to call him the dragon world's second in command. I'm trying to remember if they ever mentioned Szilard before in the mainline series. It's completely escaping me for some reason. It's making me think that he's probably going to be the problem, or at least one of the early triggers for this whole thing. Szilard was always calm and composed, with sharp judgment. It was often his role to consolidate the opinions of the 5 dragon generals and present the optimal solution to Lord Dragon God. As stupid, impossible. But this time, his words caused Maxwell to erupt in anger and Chaos to display clear displeasure. Yet unperturbed, Szilard calmly glanced at the two of them and continued speaking. A king dragon is out of the question. If a monster capable of killing Crystal existed, it would already reveal itself and cause widespread damage. The only being capable of killing Crystal and the dragon world are Lord Dragon God and us, the 5 dragon generals. Szilard casted a fleeting glance towards Lord Dragon God. I'm wondering when one of them is going to look to Laplace. I mean, the easy answer to explain is that he's doing all this stuff that, again, Dola is supposed to be doing. So he can't, but still, I have a feeling eventually it's going to go back to him. Could he do it? Though he didn't say it, his look conveyed, if by some unimaginable chance, Lord Dragon God had a reason to kill Crystal, then regardless of that reason, we would abide by your decision and action without question. Hey, boss, if you had to kill him, let us know. We're cool. I mean, just let us know. I mean, a reason would be nice, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Lord Dragon God shook his head gravely. There was no way Lord Dragon God would kill Crystal, who was practically his own child. There's that whole thing, too. Even for Szilard, the leader of the 5 Dragon Generals, saying something like that aloud could have led to chaos or Maxwell killing him for disrespect. Of course, I wouldn't have stayed silent either, but unfortunately, I didn't have the right to speak in this meeting. My role was to act as an observer on behalf of Lady Dola, listening to everything without missing a single word and reporting back to her. I couldn't tarnish Lady Dola's honor by making an irresponsible remark that would disrupt the proceedings. None of us, of the 5 Dragon Generals, would betray the trust of Lord Dragon God. If any of us committed such a betrayal, we would tear off our limbs and crush our own hearts right here and now to apologize to Lord Dragon God. Therefore, the most logical conclusion is that an outsider is responsible. So you're saying it's the demons? The demons have always been hostile towards us. What's so strange about the idea they could use some sort of scheme to kill Crystal? You think the likes of the demons could kill one of the 5 Dragon Generals? Chaos. While we pride ourselves on being the strongest, the 8 Demon Kings are also formidable adversaries. Well, there's the answer there. They've already established the 8 Demon Kings. Arrogance could lead to our downfall. Or are you incapable of assessing your opponent's strength? Yeah, I'm already kind of wondering at this point if this will end up turning into one of those situations where somebody's obviously trying to trigger some sort of an attack. It's not necessarily that somebody on the demon side is coming in there to invade. It's more that somebody not liking the potential of an invasion is trying to trigger something to happen before then. It's going to be an ally that is causing this confusion. Chaos fell silent as Szilard's sharp retort. The 8 Demon Kings could be seen as demon equivalent of the 5 Dragon Generals. Incidentally, one of them had been the reason why I had been beaten to a pulp and driven away. So yeah, I was bringing that up again. So that was one of them, yeah. Demons are not as powerful as dragonfolk. Compared to dragonfolk, they were slower and lacked the protection of tough scales. However, they possessed near immoral endurance and were far more adept at utilizing magic than we were. In the 6 worlds, demons were the second most powerful beings. For an average demon, Crystal could have been untouchable. But against one of the 8 Demon Kings, even a member of the 5 Dragon Generals couldn't expect an easy victory. Or, at least, everyone believed so. Yeah, I mean, that would be my conclusion there in this thought process would be the idea that, yes, what if multiple of these, Demon Kings attacked him or ambushed him or something? Still, if that's the case, it would mean the demons have completed a method to cross the boundary and use it without permission. Finally, we're finally going to bring up this boundary. Oh my gosh, this has been troubling the entire time we're reading this idea of they're supposed to be going to other areas and teaching them stuff, and they're talking about how it seems like everybody knows each other. It seems like they're aware of each other, but I thought it was just the gods themselves were transporting. The boundary, we're going to get into it. The boundary refers to the wall-like barrier that separates the worlds. Crossing the boundary means traveling to another world. Back then, I didn't fully grasp the implications, but at the time, people from all the worlds were vanishing mysteriously, and research was being done about the incidents. Yes, in other words, they were researching teleportation magic. Of course, teleportation magic hadn't been perfected yet. Had it been, its use would undoubtedly have required the approval of the gods, both from the departing worlds and the arriving one. Okay, so this kind of pretty much all checks so far. Again, the idea there's the 6-face worlds here, and there's a barrier, a boundary between each one of them, and they're seemingly figuring out ways to go across then. Before, it was the gods that were essentially doing that, I guess. And again, well, obviously, because, again, the dragon god went over to the demon world. They're obviously transporting, and normally they had to give permission to other people. But there apparently is currently people that are working on teleportation magic to get around that. And they're seemingly implying that some of the disappearance is because of that research. There was incidents of people disappearing, people researching teleportation magic, and using this would require the approval of the gods. Which this also does kind of remind me of way back when. I think it was Nanahoshi stuff. Yeah, I think it was Nanahoshi was talking about summoning magic. Spirit summoning, all that kind of stuff. She mentioned something to the effect of there was these rules that were created by the gods. Certain things that you just couldn't do. I think it was her that was talking about it. It might have been when they went to Pegasus' fortress. There was some mention of like the gods having some sort of laws and whatnot that were in place that prevented certain things from happening. There you go. These gods. If they truly required a way to cross the boundary, that would be a grave situation. Yeah, you're talking about invasion. But for now, we have no way of verifying it, nor do we have the means to find the one who killed Crystal and take revenge. Solar's words were tinged with bitterness. After all, whatever had killed Crystal, a being strong enough to eliminate one of the 5 dragon generals, was no ordinary foe. It meant it was powerful enough to withstand a battle with 1,000 troops. Whether it was a monster or a demon, sending an ill-prepared search party would only lead to more casualties. Chaos, leave the vengeance of Crystal to me. If it's that kind of job, shouldn't I be the one to take care of it? The 2 dragon generals roared with fervor, but the decision wasn't theirs, or even Caesar's to make. The authority to decide in this meeting always rested with a single man, Lord Dragon God. How shall we proceed? Of course, if you entrusted it to me, I would undoubtedly track down the culprit and demonstrate the might of the dragon folk. With that, Szilard turned his gaze towards me. Okay, I'm like, what? What are we doing? With that, Szilard turned his gaze towards me. It was directed at me, who had silently been taking notes of the meeting all this time. He's just over there. Why not let Laplace handle it? Yeah, Szilard's sus. Szilard's, he's totally sus. Yeah, I'm calling it. I'm calling it. I don't see why he would want Laplace to do this. It's partly due to the fact that we haven't really seen any interaction between Szilard and Laplace at all. And again, it's painting him too much to be somebody that is like the center of this entire civilization. He's trying to cause something to happen. He's not a bad person. He just doesn't want something to come after them. And he's trying to cause something to happen so that they can make the action first. Is really where it's going. The room erupted into murmurs at his suggestion. That's stupid. Dolo would be one thing. But to let that half-blood demon take such a task? The one who roared in protest was Chaos. He glared at me with his deep eyes, baring his teeth, as he yelled at Szilard. Chaos was, well, a stubborn man. Once he decided that demons were evil, he would carry that prejudice against them forever. Against even Lord Dragon God, apparently. Enough of this nonsense. Even if he is the Lord Dragon God's adopted son, how could someone like him handle the task? Find the culprit who killed one of the 5 dragon generals. You won't know until you let him try. Szilard accepted the angry outburst, as if it were a gentle breeze. Being yelled at by Chaos was likely an everyday occurrence for him. But for me, it was terrifying. Chaos, the Mad Dragon King, was truly a fearsome person. Dola told me that while this man is still inexperienced, he has strength comparable to us 5 dragon generals. Bad thing to bring up right now. Bad thing to bring up right now. Rather than wasting the time of the dragon generals, or worse, Lord Dragon God himself, on searching for a culprit whose existence is uncertain, it's more reasonable to send someone with comparable power. To be honest, I thought that being called equal to the 5 dragon generals was a huge overestimation. At the time, I still lacked confidence in myself. Even if he finds a culprit, he'll end up dying in vain. Even so, he's one of us dragonfolk. At the very least, he might bring back some useful information. Bah! This is going nowhere. Maxwell, say something. Chaos, practically spitting fire, turned to Maxwell. He'd probably thought that Maxwell would side with him and oppose the idea. However, Maxwell maintained his usual nonchalant expression. Well, why not? I think it's fine. Let him try. His words were shockingly casual. What? What the hell are you saying? That's not like you at all. Maxwell was even more of a fighter than Chaos. In situations like this, he was usually the first to charge in and take the lead. That's why he thought Chaos wouldn't yield on such an important role. Being a vanguard was a position of honor after all. Do you understand how serious this is? One of us, 5 dragon generals, comrades since ancient times, has been killed. Yes, I know. So Chaos, who do you think will be next? Next, you say? I was thinking about why Caesar brought this up. If the culprit is working systematically and targeting the 5 dragon generals, then they'll probably try to take us down one by one. Chaos. Chaos seemed to realize what Maxwell was getting at. While he was a fighter, he wasn't stupid. If the culprit's goal was to wipe out the 5 dragon generals, then the culprit would likely set traps capable of killing even someone like Crystal. I didn't know what kind of traps might be used, but they'd certainly be effective against the others as well. If the 5 dragon generals are going to act, it would be best to be in pairs. But with Dola absent, we can't afford to have 2 of us leave at the same time, and putting Lord Dragon God himself on the front lines is out of the question. Maxwell proudly presented his reasoning. Whether it was correct or not, Solar's wry smile made it obvious. In short, my life was considered expendable. No, perhaps that's not quite accurate. By then, I had already proven my usefulness, but compared to losing another of the 5 dragon generals, I was the lesser loss. It's at least it has logic. It has logic at least. It makes sense, right? I see. The issue is whether that brat has the strength to carry out the mission. Well, we'll just have to trust Dola's word on that. Maxwell's conclusion earned a deep nod from Chaos. Their trust in Lady Dola's judgment was evident without needing to be said. Then, what shall we do? Still, the decision didn't rest on Soulard. He deferred to the one person who had remained silent the entire time. Lord Dragon God stayed silent for a short moment. With an expressionless face, surveyed the room. His gaze swept across Chaos, Maxwell, Soulard, and finally landed on me. Laplace, can you do it? If it's your order, I'll carry it out. When Lord Dragon God asked if I could, there was no way I could say no. To be honest, though, I wasn't confident. And that is chapter 8. My gosh, I was really hoping to get to a stinger point, but I guess it's a good build-up point for the next Mushoku Monday. But I'm going to call it there because obviously I'm running a little bit long right now. But interesting little set of chapters. Unfortunately, not like too much to super dig into, which is kind of unfortunate. I kind of felt like I just kind of read. There wasn't really anything to really kind of dig into, except for like that little brief part right here where we're getting into sort of the possibilities of what actually happened here. Obviously, we know that eventually what's going to happen is the man god. The man god's eventually going to get involved. I'm just, again, like I've said before, I don't really want to stick to we know what happens, but more kind of let it tell the story and build into it because we don't know when that happens. We don't know when we're going to have his actual involvement. We're not sure exactly when the points that we know about actually happen. All we really do know so far is that, yes, Lord Dragon God has noted before that there's a trust bond issue between sides here. Specifically, the demon folk. The demon folks don't like the dragon folks. And Lord Dragon God's trying to bridge that and create a little understanding and a little bit of trust between the two sides. Question mark here is what's really going to be the trigger point here. Is the man god already involved, or is this sort of the build up to that? And my prediction is what kind of typically happens with these types of stories is where somebody sees there is a potential threat. There could be a time where the demon folks attack us. Somebody's obviously trying to figure out a way to transport between the two sides, get past that barrier. Well, I don't want to wait for them to open that door and then suddenly invade us and kill us all. So for the betterment, for the safety of our people, I'm going to cause Lord Dragon God to just take action. He wants peace. I don't think we can have that. Let's cause something to happen. So let's take out one of our generals and create that threat. Create that understanding that something bad's going to happen. Thus, he has to take action. And this could be the starting points of that. This could be that breaking point right here. Again, my question more goes in the idea of who is going to be behind creating this teleportation. Is the demon folk? They've already mentioned before, I mean, it was in this segment right here, that while, yes, the dragon folk seemingly are at the top of the food chain, they are the most powerful, the demons are right behind them. And a lot of their strength comes through their immortality, or at least their durability, their inability to die, and as well as their magic, their understanding of magic. So this at least is implying to me that even at this point in time, demon folk were doing or practicing a lot of magic. I think previously I had the understanding that it wasn't until they all sort of convened that magic was starting to disperse. Originally, I believe they said it was the elves that were the ones that were creating magic, and that the humans adopted it, and I would assume at that point it probably was adopted by the demon folk as well. But I thought that the origins of magic itself was going to be specifically the elves. But I guess it probably just could be magic as we understood at the time, which is, again, fire magic, earth magic, that kind of stuff. Not necessarily all the time. Because, I mean, we see it. The dragon folk are literally creating some sort of, like, gravity manipulation spell with their wings in order to fly around. There's existence of magic. There's auras and magic and all that kind of stuff. What kind of magic is the question mark there? But there's emphasis here that the demon folks are already working on magic, which would sort of, carry on into the idea of teleportation as well, or summoning or something like that. So we could start at that point, get into them doing things. I think the thing that kind of brings a question mark to me at that point is if they're working on teleportation was a common thing that we've had throughout this series up at this point. There's an emphasis throughout the entire series of this idea that teleportation and summoning is the same thing. You're just creating a tunnel in which things go through in the end. Whether it's you're sending yourself somewhere else through that tunnel or you're pulling something through that tunnel. It's the same idea across the board. Could somebody, in the process of trying to figure out how they can go from, let's say the demon world, go from the demon world to the dragon world in order to attack or whatever, or at least just transport, did they suddenly, summon somebody? And then that's how we have, again, this injection of some sort of other being that shouldn't be there. Say, the man god or something like that, being brought in this world and causing a problem. Again, there's going to be people probably making fun of me at this point. I'm still, like, of this mindset that I don't want to assume that the human god is going to be the man god. That they're going to be, because I think even with the man, and he could have been lying. The man god himself didn't even want to admit that. He didn't want to admit that. And you would think that he would, if he wanted to gain trust of Rudius, he would say, yes, I am the human god that you hear about. He denied it. He didn't want to accept it. I think there was sort of an emphasis of trying to, at least again, separate the two of them. So, unless I'm forgetting at some point they made some sort of distinction there, I'm pretty sure there was never really like a connection made there. So yeah, I kind of wonder if somebody screwed up at some point during this time period here and brought an individual into being, which would be the man god. Anyways, I'm going to call it there, chat. We're going to call it there at Chapter 8. As usual, again, I want to take it at a decent pace, but I don't want to kind of over-push things. Next week, we'll come back with Chapter 9, Search, which I'm guessing is going to be our Laplace searching for what caused this whole thing to happen. Or maybe go check out Dola and see what she thinks about this. She's going to throw a fit. He's going to go back to Dola and she can be like, damn it, they fight. Somebody screwed up. What the hell did Crystal do? I wonder if Dola would be upset about Crystal. They imply the idea like them just kind of, putting the two of them together in order to have a child. I wouldn't doubt that the relationship between Crystal and Dola is not like romantic. It's just more of an aspect of like, this is their duty. I could totally see Dola doing that. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. I thank you guys for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after we end here. But I greatly appreciate your guys' kind words, your support, all that stuff. And yes, greatly appreciate it. Support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. But gonna do it again. Until next Mushoku Monday, I'll take care. The eight demon kings are also formidable adversaries, but they primarily involved overseeing matters within the cities. Cities? Reducing the animosity